Shalom, my friends. Let me ask you a question that is whispered in boardrooms, debated in academic halls, and typed into search engines in the quiet of the night. It's a question that makes some people uncomfortable and others intensely curious. Why is it that the Jewish people, who represent less than 0.2% of the world's population, are so disproportionately represented in the fields of finance, science, entrepreneurship, and the arts? Consider this. In America, Jews make up about 2.4% of the population. Yet by some estimates, they have accounted for over a third of the Forbes 400 list of wealthiest Americans. They have won over 20% of all Nobel Prizes ever awarded. This isn't a recent phenomenon. For centuries, in vastly different cultures, from the shtetls of Eastern Europe to the bustling streets of New York City, this pattern has persisted. Is it a conspiracy? Is it some sort of genetic advantage? Is it just luck, repeated over thousands of years? I am here to tell you it is none of those things. The answer is far more practical, far more profound, and far more accessible than you could ever imagine. It is a set of ancient, time-tested principles encoded in a 3,000-year-old book and its accompanying oral traditions. These are not secrets reserved for a select few. They are universal laws of human flourishing, available to anyone with the wisdom to learn them and the courage to apply them. My name is Rabbi David, and for the past 30 years I have lived in two worlds. In one world I am a rabbi, a student and teacher of the Torah and the Talmud, immersed in the ancient wisdom of my ancestors. In the other world, I am a businessman, an entrepreneur who has built multiple 8-figure companies from the ground up, starting with nothing more than a few $100s and a head full of these very principles. I have been blessed with material success, but I have also known failure. I have tasted the bitterness of bankruptcy and the sweetness of $1 billion valuation. And through it all, I have found that my success in the boardroom was always with practical, step-by-step blueprint. A set of ancient rules that you can apply to your own life, starting today, regardless of your faith, your background, or your current financial situation. This is not about becoming Jewish. It is about accessing a universal technology for wealth creation that has been beta tested for 3 millennia. So, get a pen, get some paper, and open your mind. We are about to begin. Before we dive into the practical strategies, we must first lay the spiritual and philosophical foundation. Without this, the how is meaningless. You see, in our tradition, we don't just have rules for money. We have a comprehensive worldview, a theology of economics. And it all begins in the 2nd chapter of the book of Genesis. After creating the universe, after creating the Garden of Eden, after creating the first man, Adam, God looks at his creation, and for the first time, he says that something is not good. What is this one thing that is not good in God's perfect world? Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. It is not good for man to be alone. Now, the simple reading of this verse is that it's about marriage. God is about to create Eve, Hava, to be a partner for Adam, and that is true. But our sages, for thousands of years, have understood this verse on a much, much deeper level. This is not just a statement about matrimony. It is the foundational statement about the human condition. It is the spiritual axiom upon which all of human society, and therefore all of economics, is built. We are not created to be isolated islands. We are created to connect, to interact, to serve, and to be served. Our very essence is relational. Think about what this means. It means that your prosperity, your sustenance, your parnassah, is fundamentally linked to your connection with other people. You cannot generate wealth in a vacuum. Wealth is a byproduct of plow, to plant, to harvest, to grind, to bake, just to get a single piece of bread. But Ben Zoma, I wake up and the baker has already baked my bread. The farmer has already grown my wheat. The milkman has delivered my milk. The entire world is a network of specialists, each one serving the other. His blessing was not one of arrogance, but of profound gratitude and staggering humility. He understood that his existence was made possible by a vast web of human connection and specialized service. And here is the crucial implication. If all of these people were created to serve you, then you, in turn, have a sacred obligation to find your unique way to serve them. Your life's work, your business, your career is to find your unique specialization within this divine network of interdependence. It is to answer the question, what is my unique service to the world? This is the core principle. Wealth is not a thing to be pursued. It is a result to be received. It is the inevitable consequence of finding your unique gift and using it to serve the needs of others. The Jewish approach to prosperity is not about hoarding, but about circulating. It's not about isolation, but about integration. It's about understanding that the more value you provide to the network, the more value the network will reflect back to you. It is not good for man to be alone. This is true in marriage, it is true in community, and it is the most fundamental law of economics. If you try to build your financial life in isolation, you are fighting against the very fabric of creation. You are destined to fail. But if you build it on a foundation of connection and service, you are aligning yourself with a divine and unstoppable force. I know this might sound abstract, philosophical, so let me bring it down to earth. Let me tell you a story from my own life, a story I have rarely shared. It's a story of failure, of humiliation, and of the moment this ancient principle saved me from ruin. I was 24 years old. I had just was convinced it was brilliant, and I was going to do it all myself. After all, I was the genius, right? I had the Gemara cop. So I sat in a tiny, windowless office and I tried to be a one-man army. I was the CEO, the lead programmer, though I barely knew how to code, the marketing director, the sales team, the graphic designer, and the bookkeeper. I worked 18-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and a staggering amount of self-importance. I was a perfect illustration of the man in isolation. I was Adam before Eve. I was alone, and I thought it was a sign of strength. For 6 months, I bled money. The software was buggy because I wasn't a great programmer. The marketing materials looked amateurish because I wasn't a designer. I made maybe a dozen sales, mostly to sympathetic relatives. The phone never rang. The bank account dwindled. The pressure mounted. My wife, who was working a full-time job to support my genius endeavor, would come home to find me hunched over a keyboard, increasingly desperate and irritable. The joy was gone. The passion was gone. All that was left was the grinding, solitary effort. The day of reckoning came on a Tuesday. I remember the colour of the sky was a flat, unforgiving grey. The final cheque from my father-in-law's loan had cleared, and it wasn't enough to cover the rent on my tiny office for the next month. I was done. I had failed. Not just failed, I had been humiliated. The genius with the Talmudic mind couldn't even build a simple piece of software. I had to make 2 phone calls that day. The first was to my landlord, to tell him I was breaking the lease. The second, the one I dreaded most, was to my father-in-law, to tell him I had lost all of his money. That night I couldn't sleep. I felt like a fraud. I was ashamed to face my wife, ashamed to face my family, ashamed to go to synagogue. In my despair, I did the only thing I could think of. I went to see my Rebbe, my old mentor. Touched his lips. "Exactly," he said softly. "You didn't acquire for yourself a friend. You didn't find a partner. You read the Torah, David, but you did not understand it. God himself, in the act of creation, said, 'Let us make man in our image.' Who was he talking to? The sages say he was consulting with the angels. The Almighty, the Infinite, the All-Powerful, consulted with his subordinates before creating man. He demonstrated the principle of partnership. And you, a boy from Brooklyn with a half-baked idea for a piece of software, you thought you could do it alone?" He picked up a volume of the Talmud from his desk. "It is written, 'Asa lecha rav uknei lecha chaver.' Make for yourself a teacher and acquire for yourself a friend." It is one of the 48 ways that Torah is acquired. It is not just a piece of ethical advice. It is a business plan. You were so busy trying to be the Rav, the master of everything, that you forgot the second half of the verse. You forgot to acquire a partner. You are a Talmudist, David. Your gift is analysis, text, ideas. You are not a programmer. You are not a marketer. So why did you pretend to be? Where was your partner who loves to code? Where was your partner who loves to sell? You were an island. And God's world is not built for islands. It is built for networks. It is not good for man to be alone. Now go. Stop trying to be God. Find your partners. Find the people who love doing what you hate. Serve them by giving them your vision, and let them serve you with their skills. Then, and only then, will you have a business. That conversation was the most painful and most valuable business lesson of my life. I walked out of his study a different man. I shut down the company. I swallowed my pride and went to work for another software firm, not as a CEO, but as a junior product manager. And I spent the next 2 years not trying to be a genius, but trying to be a connector. I spent my time identifying talent. Come not from your solitary struggle, but from the quality of your connections and the depth of your service to others. So, how do we translate this ancient, foundational principle into a concrete, practical strategy for your life, right now? How do you move from being an island to becoming a network, from a solitary striver to a master connector? Over the centuries, our tradition has developed a blueprint for this. It's not taught in business schools, but it has been practiced in Jewish communities from Vilna to Wall Street. I call it the 4 laws of interdependence. These are the practical, actionable steps to apply the principle of lo tov levado, it is not good to be alone, to your financial and professional life. Let's break them down. Law number 1, the law of specialization. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers, says, Asa lecha rav. On a simple level, this means make for yourself a teacher. Find a mentor, someone to guide you. This is, of course, essential. But on a deeper level, the word rav also means master or great one. The teaching here is to make yourself a master, not a master of everything. That was my mistake. That is the path to mediocrity and burnout. The teaching is to make yourself a master of one thing. You must find your unique, narrow area of expertise and go deeper into it than anyone else. In a world that celebrates the generalist and the multitasker, the Jewish tradition has always championed the specialist. Why? Because in a network, your value is determined by the uniqueness of your contribution. If you do what everyone else can do, your value is limited. You are a commodity. But if you do what only a few can do, you become indispensable. The Talmudic scholar specializes in one tractate. The master craftsman specializes in one material. Your first task is not to start a business. Your first task is to identify your specialization. How do you do this? Ask yourself 3 questions. First, lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend, or more accurately in this context, a partner. This is the practical application of my Rebbe's harsh but life-changing advice. Once you have identified your specialization, your sacred duty is to find partners who have specialized in everything else you need. Notice the language, acquire for yourself. It's an active process. It's a transaction. You don't just hope to meet the right people, you go out and acquire them. And what are you acquiring them with? Not necessarily money. You acquire them with your vision, with your specialized skill, with your passion. You offer them a piece of the dream. This is the Jewish model of partnership, the shutafut. It's not the same as hiring an employee. An employee works for a paycheck. A partner works for a shared destiny. An employee gives you their time. A partner gives you their soul. My catastrophic first business failed because I tried to hire my weaknesses. I tried to pay a freelancer to do a little coding, a little design. It was transactional and soulless. My second, successful business was built because I gave away equity. I gave away a piece of the ownership to a master programmer and a master salesman. I didn't want their hands, I wanted their brains and their hearts. I understood that 50% of a thriving enterprise is infinitely greater than 100% of a failed one. Your homework for this law is to create what I call a partnership blueprint. Take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write down your specialization, the one thing you are committed to becoming the best in the world at. On the right side, write down every other function a business needs: marketing, sales, finance, operations, legal, technology. That list on the right is not your to-do list. It is your hiring plan. It is the job description for the partners you must now go out and acquire. Stop seeing your weaknesses as failures. They are not. They are invitations. They are signposts pointing you to the people you are meant to connect with. Consequence. The profit is not the prize. It is the applause the world gives for a service well rendered. This is why the Hebrew word for charity, tzedakah, doesn't mean charity. It comes from the same root as tzedek, justice. Giving is not an act of benevolence, it is an act of justice. In the same way, providing value in business is not just a good strategy, it is a moral and spiritual obligation. You are restoring balance to the world by solving a problem, by meeting a need. How do you do this practically? You must adopt a mindset of 10x value. Before you ask for $1, you must ask yourself, how can I provide $10 of value? Before you launch a product, you must be convinced that it will deliver far more in results than it costs in price. You should feel almost guilty for how good of a deal your customer is getting. This is the opposite of the modern mantra of charge what you're worth. That is a self-centered approach. The Torah approach is serve with such overwhelming value that the world cannot help but appreciate you. Your goal is not to extract value, but to create it. The extraction will take care of itself. That is law number 3, mishpat tzedek. Be obsessed with value. Finally, law number 4, the law of reinvestment. In Deuteronomy, the Torah promises, God will bless you in the work of your hands. Bracha b'ma'aseh yadecha. The blessing is in the work, in the action. But our tradition teaches that a blessing needs a vessel to be held. You can't pour water into a clenched fist. You need an open cup. In finance, the vessel for blessing is reinvestment. When you provide value and the network sends those certificates of appreciation, money, back to you, you have a choice. The common path is to immediately expand your lifestyle. A bigger house, a fancier car. You increase the size of your own cup. The Jewish path, the path of sustainable wealth, is to first reinvest the overflow. You must create a system where a significant portion of your recognition that our wealth does not truly belong to us, we are merely its custodians. And a final portion is reinvested into other people's businesses, stocks, real estate, private equity. This is an expression of faith in the broader network of human creativity. By systematically reinvesting your profits, you are expanding your capacity to receive God's blessing. You are building a larger and larger vessel. Wealth is not a static number, it is a dynamic flow. Reinvestment is the engine that drives that flow, creating a cycle where your service creates profit and your profit enhances your ability to serve. That is law number 4. Bracha b'ma'aseh yadecha. Reinvest the blessing. These 4 laws, specialization, partnership, value, and reinvestment, are not my ideas. They are a 3,000-year-old operating system for prosperity, derived from the single powerful insight that it is not good for man to be alone. Now let's look at the world around us. Do not think for a moment that this is just some ancient, dusty philosophy. This is the hidden blueprint behind some of the most successful enterprises of the modern era. These laws are as relevant in Silicon Valley today as they were in the marketplaces of ancient Jerusalem. Let's take Apple, arguably one of the most successful companies in human history. Was Steve Jobs a one-man army? Was he an island? Absolutely not. He was a master of the law of partnership. Jobs was a visionary, a marketer, a genius of taste and user experience. That was his specialization. But he couldn't write a line of code to save his life. So, what did he do? He didn't try to learn, he acquired a partner. He found Steve Wozniak, a programmer of unparalleled genius. Jobs was the why, Wozniak was the how. Their partnership was a perfect embodiment of Asa lecha rav ukne lecha chaver. Each man was a master of his domain, and together they created a network that changed the world. They were not two employees, they were two modern fortune. Warren Buffett is perhaps the greatest capital allocator in history. His genius is not in earning money, but in reinvesting it. For decades, Berkshire Hathaway paid no dividend. Every dollar of profit was meticulously and strategically reinvested, buying more businesses, creating more value, expanding the vessel for future blessings. He lives in the same house he bought in 1958. His cup has remained the same size, while the overflow has compounded into a force that can move markets and fund philanthropies on a global scale. This is the law of bracha b'ma'aseh yadecha, played out on the world stage. Even the law of specialization is everywhere you look. In the world of venture capital, the most successful investors are not generalists, they are specialists. They focus on one area: fintech, biotech, enterprise SaaS, and they go deeper than anyone else. They become the Rav, the master of that one domain. They become the go-to person for any entrepreneur in that field. Their expertise is so narrow and so deep that it becomes a magnet for talent and opportunity. So you see, these are not Jewish business secrets in the sense that they only work for Jews. They are universal principles of human and economic nature that the Jewish tradition, through its multimillennial focus on textual analysis and community living, happened to discover, articulate, and practice with remarkable consistency. They are the laws of the network, and in our hyper-connected, globalized world, they are more relevant and more powerful than ever before. So, my friends, we have journeyed from the Garden of Eden to Silicon Valley. We have seen how a single verse in the Torah, "It is not good for man to be alone," is the spiritual DNA of all sustainable prosperity. We have learned that wealth is not a thing you pursue, but a consequence of connection and service. And we have laid out the 4 laws of interdependence, the practical blueprint for applying this wisdom. 1. The law of is your challenge, your first step on this path. Before you go to sleep tonight, I want you to perform a small, sacred act of self-assessment. Take a single piece of paper and a pen. Draw a line down the middle. On the left side, I want you to answer the question, what is my unique specialization? What is the one skill, the one passion, the one area of knowledge where I am willing to commit to becoming a world-class master? Be honest. It may be coding, it may be teaching, it may be listening, it may be organizing. Write it down. Then, on the right side, I want you to list all the things you are not, all the tasks in business and in life that drain your energy, that you procrastinate on, that you are simply not good at. Marketing, bookkeeping, public speaking, managing details, whatever they are. Be brutally honest. Now, Look at that list on the right. That is not a list of your failures. It is not a source of shame. From this day